I'm Dr. Cathy Bush.
And hello, I'm Dr. Tara Peters, and we are the Leadership Doctors.
We're excited today to have a conversation with Ben Pyle. Ben is the general manager of the Denver region for Toyota North America, which is a really big region covering 6 different states and a lot of dealerships that are in those states. I think he said 71. And so he'll tell us a bit more about that span of his leadership role and the kinds of activities that he's involved in. Of course, all of us are dealing with the changes that are associated with this pandemic and the coronavirus and the way that that's impacting work. And so we're interested in getting Ben's insights from that as well. So welcome, Ben.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
We're really looking forward to having this conversation with you and catching up with you. So as we get started, I gave a little bit of the background of what you're doing, but if you can give us a sense of your leadership journey through Toyota and the things that you've done to get yourself to the position where you are now the general manager with a really cool job and set of responsibilities.
Yeah, happy to. So I started, as many people in Toyota do, I started right out of college. So I started right out of college as a management trainee is what we call it. That's kind of the intro job out of there. I worked at our headquarters, which was down in California. And then I moved through. We have a retail network of dealers, and we carve the country up into various, we call them regions. We have 12 of them, and I worked over in the Central Atlantic region, which is kind of on the East Coast. It's that Maryland, sort of Virginia part of the country. And I worked there for the bulk of my time. I was there for about 12, 13 years. And then after that, I went back to headquarters, spent a little time back there. Then I worked up in the Pacific Northwest. So I worked up in the Portland market, which covers Washington and that whole area. And then back down to Los Angeles, covered Southern California, and now out in Denver, covering basically the whole western half of the U.S. except for California. So that's what I'm doing now.
So really, you've grown up inside of Toyota, if you will, and really have an expansive view of the organization. And so I think that is really helpful to our audience that's tuning in today to get this perspective from you, given your time with Toyota, the variety of roles that you've held, and really what that means for you in this current context. As Cathy alluded to earlier, you got 6 states, you got 71, dealerships here. And so of course, you're navigating, leading your operations, your teams. And so it would be great for you to share really how you are adjusting, how you're navigating this landscape, and any kinds of unique insights that you think would be instructive for those who are tuning in today that might be helpful to them.
Yeah, so one of the things as we develop in this organization specifically is we don't, there's a lot of different parts to this business, from fixed operations, which is working on cars and repairing them, recalls and such. And then there's over on the sales side of the organization, which is a little bit more obvious, supply chain management and all of those other sort of functions. And when you go through the organization, you work in all of them. You don't specialize in one area. So you develop sort of a general working knowledge in how the entire machine works. So having been through just about every different position that you can have through the organization, you get a pretty broad scope of knowledge on what you need to do. And when you get into times like this, that's even more important, because you have to generally understand how all of it works in order to manage it appropriately. Current environment we're in right now with coronavirus, with stay-at-home orders and all the other pieces that go along with that, you're not in front of everybody every day. So having a working knowledge of how all of it comes together really allows you to have the tools you need to be able to manage it effectively, especially remotely like we're in today. So.
And of course, I think you mentioned earlier that there are a lot of different rules and criteria in the different states. And so as a leader of folks who are working in all these different states, you're kind of juggling an awful lot of everybody's needs and everybody's requirements, everybody's rules, and what all that means. And so how is that going for you in terms of leading a group of people who are making really tough decisions kind of on the fly right now?
So the challenge is with 6 states and an organization here to grow and develop, the rules are very different depending on where you're sitting. If you're sitting in Arizona, you have a completely different set of rules than if you're sitting in Utah or in Colorado. So we have to manage each of those and understand what the impact is of the different governmental orders that are out there and the impact to the retail network. But then we also have our office, which is based out of Denver, Colorado. And we have our own set of rules for our own associates that we have to manage and keep them safe and make sure that they can continue to be effective and engaged and motivated and moving the company in the right direction, but at the same time doing it safely and complying with all the orders that are in place here in the state of Colorado. So, a lot of people with an organization have to worry about, what's going on directly around them, what's happening in their town, what restrictions they have, and manage that. We have to actually cover off basically a quarter of the United States worth of geography and understand all the differences between them. And then, of course, all of the retail network has the same challenges that I do, where they have to keep their associates safe and comply with their orders and keep their customers safe and all of that, and still keep commerce flowing, which becomes a challenge. But it's what we've become pretty good at here in the last 6-8 weeks at managing through. So
yeah, it's amazing to me as we hear stories of the kind of the resilience and the creativity in the way that people are kind of making this work and making the best of it and thriving in this environment. And so no doubt that you've had some challenges and things that are just like, ooh, I need a redo on that one, but also kind of figuring out how to help other people thrive. Anything that surprised you, Ben? Anything that either about your own leadership? For our viewers, Ben is a former DeVos MBA student from the Dealership Executive MBA program that was maybe 10 years ago. And we had a lot of conversations about leadership principles back in those days for sure. And Ben already had leadership experience. And so Ben, as I'm thinking about right now, who you are as a leader, what matters to you, any particular surprises about the things that have kind of jumped out and become more important, or that you've really had to rely on also with the other leaders in your organization?
yeah, for sure. The biggest thing is the speed of change. We went into this like everybody else around the world. We went into this thinking, man, is this going to be a big deal? And then a day later, it became a bigger deal. And then it said, well, we can still keep things kind of going as normal. We'll just keep an eye on it. And then a day later, we're shut down. So we didn't have a chance when, we did here in Denver. And looking back, it was a very good decision. Where we started doing work at home, where you have a day a week, self-directed. And we did it for employee engagement, keep people motivated, work-life balance, all of those types of things. But it gave us a little, we had some training wheels on there for about a year, which we didn't know that we'd need to take off. We ended up having to take them off overnight. And we don't do anything overnight. We're a pretty big established company, and we would take months and months and months to sit back and write policies and determine how we're going to do things, and then try it and pilot it and then roll it out. Well, we had about 48 hours to go from this thing isn't real to there's nobody in the building anymore. And we have to work remotely, and we have to keep everybody engaged and working on their tasks. And we didn't have any time to figure it out. So we had to deal with all of the engagement learnings that we've used over the years and trying to keep people going. But we also had to deal with change in their personal lives, right? These folks are trying to figure out how to use technology at home with kids running around, with their spouse working on a different video call in the background of that video call. And all of these things had to happen almost immediately. And we had to put communication plans in place overnight so that everybody knew what was going on. And we had to do that, and we had to do that really quickly. So that was the biggest surprise to me, and I think probably to everybody who's worked through this type of a situation, is you can do it. You can do it pretty effectively. And it doesn't take as much time as sometimes we use to plan for these types of things. We can move a little quicker moving forward in various areas of our business, because this has worked out very well. And sometimes maybe we just overthink things a little too much.
I love it when it works out, right? And then we discover something about ourselves, right, in our organization, that we really can turn on a dime. We thought we had to have, a 10-step plan that would take months. And we figured out, what, we can do it in a much more compressed way. And so I really love that because it's illustrative of just how organizations are evolving, the kinds of things that you guys are really doing to meet the needs of your employees. And so, as you know, Cathy and I have written a book, The Demotivated Employee. And so, of course, as you were talking, Ben, one of the things I began to think about is, how people are, even though you've had some experiences with remote work, and so you had your training wheels on, so that was awesome. It's also new, right, for many people in your space, and they've got this new dynamic of, they've got new coworkers with their kids and their spouse, and they're trying to homeschool, but also kind of this broader point where, initially we thought, you made point to this, that it was only going to just be a couple of weeks, right? And now we're looking ahead. Is this going to be into 2021, right? Is this a 2022 thing, right? What does this look like? So kind of help our audience to understand, like, what are the kinds of things that you guys are doing to maintain employee engagement, really kind of with this focus on a longer term horizon, given that there are still these unknown variables that are still playing themselves out with the COVID virus.
Sure. So, when we go through this, and, had a lot of great leadership training, you guys included. And one of the things that we're taught pretty early on, and it works fantastic, is change management, right? And don't skip steps, run through the cycle, make everybody understand why, the need for change, and manage them through it. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but if you follow the process, it works. We didn't have time for that. And that's unfortunate because it's a good system and it works effectively. But sometimes change happens to you. You don't drive the change, and that's where we had right here. So when you step back and you say, okay, I know what's going on. I'm the general manager of the region. I'm on 45 conference calls a day. I have information flowing into me from every direction, and I got it all figured out as far as what's happening. But most don't. They're at their house. Especially when you get to the administrative level and some other folks. And there's a lot of fear that happens with that. Am I going to lose my job? Do they need me anymore? What's happening? Is Toyota going to go bankrupt? All of these types of things start swirling around in their head. And the only thing I know to do is over communicate when times like this happen. And so immediately, when we started doing work from home, we started, because it was so chaotic, we would normally never do this, but we started a 7-day-a-week, 9 a.m. Call. All associates, every associate hops on. It's about 30 minutes. Here's what happened yesterday, and here's what's going to happen today. And we did that even on weekends. We did it the whole time. Now, after about a week and a half, 2 weeks, we realized there wasn't as much content, so we scaled it back to 5 days. And now we're at Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Every associate gets on. We go through every department, what's happening, brief update. But what it really does for many of the senior leadership team, it's completely redundant. There's no new content that comes out of that. But for the rest of the 60 people that work in the office, it lets them know what's happening, lets them know what we need out of their department, what's going on out in the world, what's happening with the coronavirus, what our plan for recovery is. And they're hearing it over and over and over. So they're not making up things that go on that might or might not be true. So over communication in this time where we were sort of shortcut on the change management cycle has kind of helped us navigate the waters and keep people engaged. And then of course we'll have different departmental meetings where we work through what we need out of their group. So we get down to how you keep them engaged and how you keep them motivated. It's no different in this environment than it is in any other environment. Folks have to understand the why behind what it is that they're doing every day. And probably more important is they have to understand what we as an organization are trying to achieve and how they directly tie into that in a small or a big way, whatever it is. They have to know that the work that they're doing contributes to the broader goal of the organization. And that's how they stay engaged in their daily work. They don't look at it as wasteful or busy work, or I don't understand, nobody uses this is a waste of my time. That stuff doesn't happen as much when they understand that no, people do use it. And in fact, on tomorrow's call, I'm going to take the thing that you made yesterday and I'm going to review it with the whole team because everybody needs to know about it. And when you do that a few times, they really dig in and understand the importance of what it is that they do. We run lean. There's nobody in my building that doesn't have an important job. Sometimes they don't feel that way, right? They feel like they're not as important as somebody else. And that's our job, to make sure that they understand their role and how bad they're needed and that they do contribute to the overall organization's success. So that's what we work on every day.
That's great, Ben. Just to reemphasize for our audience, I've had, and Tara's had a lot of conversation with people who, either they're not comfortable with the video technology, or maybe they're more introverted and they don't have a high need for a lot of information. Whatever their reasons are, they're worried about overburdening people with their communication. And I keep saying, I know Tara does too, like, when in doubt, over communicate. Right now, people need to know you're there and they need to know you care about them. And so I really appreciate your example and that message in what you're doing there. I know your people appreciate that as well, the people you're working with. So as we start to wrap up, I just wondered a bit, Ben, if you could give us I'm guessing you have the opportunity all the time to look at people who are newer in their leadership career and maybe offer some developmental advice or some mentoring or other kinds of help to people. And so if you can give us an idea of some things that you would recommend that a person who might be watching this that's looking to develop their leadership skills, what would you recommend that they might start to be doing either in this interesting time while they might have a little extra time on their hands, or just in general, some of the things that you've appreciated the most on your leadership development path that you could help provide our viewers with?
Sure. There's a couple big topics that usually like to talk to folks that are starting out in their career journey. The first one is manage your career. Nobody else will manage it for you. And that is super important because, again, when you take a look at an individual like myself with 65 or so folks here, I don't know what gets them up every day, right? They have to let me know what it is that they're trying to achieve. If that's, I just need enough salary to be able to go camping all year long and I don't need career advancement, that's fine. If it's, I want to be the president of the world, I'll help you try to get there, right? But if I don't know that information, I can't help you get where it is that you're trying to go, right? So don't assume people know what it is that you're trying to achieve in life. Make sure that you're very clear on that. And then that means that the other side of that coin is that you have to be open to pretty direct feedback. If you're off track on your goal, you need your leadership team to kind of steer you and let you know, and you have to be open to that. So those are the biggest things that'll help you move the career forward. On the leadership side of that question is understanding very early on that there's a big difference between a manager and a leader. And the power of leadership is significantly different than being a good functional manager. A lot of good functional managers out there aren't very good leaders. And if you want to move up in an organization, you have to be more on the leader side than the manager side, right? Both are important skills, but leadership is a very different thing. And that really does, like we just talked about, as far as communication skills and employee engagement, you get more out of your organization when people are self-motivated and they're driving towards their own personal goals and their own personal goals that achieve the overall broader organization's goals. That's not managing. Managing would be me sitting there saying, is that spreadsheet done yet? I need it by 2. Let me double check it for you. That's going to get the box checked as far as the work task of the day, but that's not really leading your team into the future. So if you're developing yourself, really kind of diving into some work on what are the differences between leadership and management, and really honing the leadership side of that more than the doer manager side of that will help you out in your career as you kind of move forward.
Well, Ben, Cathy and I can't thank you enough for being with us today. Wow, what great insight and perspective to share with our audience. We know that they found great value in what you shared and that they can really utilize the perspective that you shared to really move their careers forward, but also to help themselves during this unique set of circumstances that we find ourselves in. So thank you so much again, Ben, for being a part of the Lessons from Leaders series today.
Happy to do it. I appreciate you guys inviting me on and talk.
It was our pleasure. So we're going to ask our viewers, we know that you found really great value from what Ben has shared today. So we want you to go over to our website, theleadershipdoctors.com. You'll find more Lessons from Leaders interviews with other industry leaders who are sharing their perspectives as well. Thanks so much for tuning in.